It's 2 a.m. and you're staring at the ceiling. Your mind won't stop. Your body feels tired, but your brain refuses to shut off. You reach for your phone, scroll for a while, and wonder what's wrong with you. But the real answer is far stranger than insomnia. Your ancestors knew this feeling too. Not because they had phones, not because they had stress about deadlines or bills. They knew it because the night itself used to work completely differently. And once you understand how, the way you sleep tonight might never look the same again. To understand it, you have to leave behind the modern bedroom. No mattress, no blackout curtains, no thermostat set to 68 degrees. Go back to a time before electric light existed at all, when the only thing separating you from total darkness was a small fire and the people around it. For most of human history, night was not one long block of unconsciousness. It was two. Historians studying old letters, court records, and diaries from centuries ago noticed something strange. People kept describing a first sleep and a second sleep. Not a nap, not an accident. A structured, expected part of the night. Here's how it worked. People would go to bed a few hours after sunset. They'd sleep for about 4 hours. Then, in the middle of the night, they would simply wake up. Not from a nightmare. Not from noise. Just naturally, as if their body had finished a chapter and was ready for a pause. During this waking period, which could last 1 to 2 hours, people didn't panic about being awake. They didn't reach for anything to knock themselves back out. They got up. They talked. They prayed. They had sex. Some visited neighbors. Some simply lay in bed thinking, turning over the events of the day, the way you might replay a conversation in your head right now at 2 a.m. Then, after this quiet stretch, they went back to sleep. This was second sleep, and it lasted until morning. A historian named Roger Ekirch spent years tracing this pattern through historical records across Europe. He found references to this two-part sleep going back centuries, embedded so casually into old texts that writers clearly assumed everyone already understood what first sleep meant. It wasn't a medical condition. It was just Tuesday night. So what changed? Why does your brain expect one continuous block of sleep instead of two natural halves? The answer sits above your head right now, quietly humming. Light. Before artificial lighting, night was governed entirely by the sun. Once it set, there was very little reason to stay upright. Darkness meant danger, cold, and limited visibility, so households would wind down early, sometimes just after dusk. That early bedtime, combined with a long stretch of darkness before dawn, naturally split into two sleep cycles, with a waking period in between. The body wasn't broken. It was simply responding to the environment it evolved in. Then came the changes. Streetlights, oil lamps, eventually electric bulbs, which spread rapidly through cities in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Suddenly, night wasn't just dark anymore, it was optional. People stayed up later. Factories ran later shifts. Cafes and social life extended into what used to be the deep, quiet hours reserved for lying in bed thinking. And as bedtime pushed later and later, that natural midnight waking window began to shrink, then disappear entirely, replaced by a single, compressed sleep period squeezed into fewer hours. A researcher named Thomas Wehr ran an experiment in the 1990s that revealed just how deeply this pattern is wired into you. He placed participants in a room with no artificial light for 14 hours a night, mimicking the long winter darkness your ancestors would have experienced. Within just a few weeks, the participants' sleep spontaneously split into two distinct phases, separated by an hour or two of calm wakefulness in the middle of the night. Nobody taught them to do this. Their bodies simply reverted to an older rhythm the moment modern light was removed, which means the segmented sleep pattern was never gone. It was buried under 150 years of artificial light, convenient as that light has been. So when you wake up at 2 a.m. and your mind starts racing, you might not be broken. You might be doing exactly what humans did for most of history. The problem isn't that you're awake. The problem is what you do next. Modern advice treats a middle-of-the-night waking as a failure, something to fix immediately with sleep aids or anxious clock watching. But for centuries, that waking period wasn't treated as an emergency. It was treated as a normal part of the rhythm of the night, sometimes even a valued one. Some historical texts describe this window as an ideal time for quiet reflection, prayer, or intimacy, precisely because the mind was calm and undistracted, hovering in that soft space between deep sleep and full wakefulness. Compare that to what actually happens now. You wake at 2 a.m., and instead of resting quietly in the dark, you reach for a phone. The bright screen tells your brain it's time to be alert. Notifications, emails, and endless scrolling replace quiet reflection with stimulation. Instead of drifting gently back towards second sleep, you accidentally convince your body that the night is over. This is the real mismatch. Not that your body wakes up. That when it does, you no longer know what to do with the quiet. There's something worth sitting with here. For thousands of years, humans built an entire relationship with darkness. Waking at night wasn't something to fear or fix. It was expected, almost sacred, a private hour tucked between two halves of rest. Somewhere in the last century and a half, that hour got erased. Not because your biology changed, but because the sun stopped being the only source of light in your life. Understanding this doesn't mean throwing out modern life or sleeping in a candlelit room to mimic your ancestors, but it might mean something simpler. If you wake at 2 a.m. and your mind is turning quietly, that isn't automatically insomnia. It might be your body doing something it has done for most of human history. The mistake isn't the waking, it's panicking about it. Or worse, filling that quiet hour with a glowing screen that convinces your brain the night is already finished. Some sleep researchers now suggest that if you wake in the night and can't immediately fall back asleep, the oldest solution might also be the simplest. Stay in the dark. Let your mind wander without reaching for a light source. Trust that the second half of the night is still coming, the same way it did for every person who lived before electricity reshaped the clock. Because right now, at 2 a.m. in your dark bedroom, you are not malfunctioning. You are echoing something ancient. Long before artificial light convinced the world that night should be one unbroken stretch of unconsciousness, humans lay awake in the middle of the dark, calm, unhurried, simply waiting for the second half of sleep to arrive. Tonight, when you wake in that same darkness, you might not be broken at all. You might just be remembering how to wait.